Today I ducked up by rubbing my mother-in-law's thigh. TIFU by rubbing my mother-in-law's thigh. Okay, so this happened a long time ago, not long after my wife and I were married. Like 14 years ago. Anyways, myself, my wife, her parents and her sister and brother-in-law all went out to eat at Texas Roadhouse. I have social anxiety, compounded by the fact that my brother-in-law hates me. I was previously divorced. He disagreed with my wife's choice in me. So we are all sitting in this booth. My wife to my left, mother-in-law to my right, and across from me are my father-in-law and sister/brother-in-law. We are ordering our food and looking through the menus and such. I just nervously put my hand down beside me and start lovingly and perhaps even suggestively rubbing my wife's thigh. Long back and forth deep strokes. Probably 10 seconds goes by and I feel my hand being grabbed and squeezed. I look down to see it's not my wife's thigh I'm rubbing, but my mother-in-law's. Immediately I'm horrified. We exchange an awkward glance and I pat her on the back as if this was all part of the plan to begin with. We've never discussed this afterwards. My wife thought it was absolutely hilarious. Still have a good relationship with my mother-in-law, although I don't ever recall us being in the same room alone since that happened. TL. Doctor, I accidentally rubbed my mother-in-law's thigh sitting next to her at a restaurant thinking it was my wife. Edit. Wow, I can't believe how this has blown up. Apparently this happens more often than I thought. I'm glad I'm not alone. And I pat her on the back, as if this was all part of the plan to begin with. What the frick, Mayo Unru, just say you thought it was your wife and apologize. Never bringing it up again. WTF, she's gonna think you're weird for all eternity instead of just clarifying it as a mistake. I can't disagree with you. What's wrong with me? A similar thing has happened to me. I was sitting in my ex-partner's lap, and he was sitting next to one of his friends. I was innocently stroking for ex's thigh for a good couple of minutes, when his friend was just like, utter stupendest, that's my leg. I think I screamed from embarrassment and everyone had a big laugh. I have to physically check whose body I'm touching now. Same here, but mine was not too bad. I used to always hold my girlfriend's hand in the car. Once I got in the car with my sister and just automatically grabbed her hand. She had a good belly laugh at my expense. OMG, I did this with my best friend. I got so used to kissing my boyfriend goodbye that when I said goodbye to my best friend, I kissed her on the lips. It was no huge deal, but I was so mortified because it was just a knee-jerk reaction to saying goodbye at this point. She didn't say anything, and we never spoke about it again, but to this day, I think why. Smacked ex-GF's mom's ass on Thanksgiving as she was bent over and said, I know what I'm doing later. A voice that I knew not to be my GF, but her mom said probably not, and stood up as my GF came walking in the kitchen. Both of them burst out in tears laughing at the horrified look on my face. Her dad, who absolutely hated me, comes in the room asking what's so funny. GF covers and said I did something stupid. Fast forward to dinner, her dad asks us what's our plan for later. Her mom goes, oh I know what they have planned, and starts laughing so hard tears flow again. He never found out. Oh, and for setting this is my ex's really religious parents that lived 5 hours away and we were staying for 5 days. Oh god. One time when I was a kid, my grandmother was reading to me in bed. I had a habit of stroking a favorite blanket while I fell asleep, and it was between her and I in the bed. I had been doing that for maybe 15 minutes when I looked up and realized I was stroking her breast. She was wearing a sweater of similar material to my blanket. To top it off, my family is super conservative, and I'm about the only member of the family my grandparents were affectionate with at all. She must have been mortified, but just kept reading. Because that's what you do when you're a wasp. You shove it down deep inside and lock it up with a key and then someday tell everyone on Reddit. I once ate popcorn from a lady next to me at the movies. My girlfriend was on the other side. I was doing it for a while and the girl finally started laughing. You the real MVP. Saved $18 that day. Should done it to the brother. Problem solved. Best response so far. Thank you. Let me rub your thigh. Did something similar to my husband's workmate. I was so embarrassed I cried, but my husband thought it was hilarious. Was his Christmas dinner with work, and I was invited for drinks afterwards. So I'm chatting to another workmate and suddenly the one to my left says, "Could you please stop stroking my leg? People are looking." My husband was sat opposite and saw the absolutely horrified expression on my face and asked what was wrong. Well, at home I share my settee with my dog and I'm often stroking him with my left hand and doing what I'm doing with my right, and that was pretty much what I was doing. In my absent-mindedness I was stroking this workmate's leg like I stroked my dog. Told my husband what I had done and he just howled laughing. He understood immediately, but I still felt stupid. My victim laughed it off. He knew it wasn't deliberate because I wasn't paying a single bit of attention to him, and he had to tap me on the shoulder a couple of times to get my attention. Made my husband sit next to me after that. Just humiliating. I still can't laugh about it because of my huge social anxieties, so I get your pain, Opus. This is kinda in the same vein as this story. Saw my brother going into gas station. We live close by each other, so I followed him in and ran up behind him and quietly leaned in only inches from his ear and freaking screamed, "Hey mother trucker." It was not my brother. This dude jumped back a foot with fists ready to roll. I kept saying, "Holy hit. I'm so sorry. You look like my brother." The shock on his face was evident and he just stared at me with huge eyes, not saying it. Like he was still ready to beat me to death at any second. I just kept muttering, "Sorry man, I'm so sorry," and got the hell out of there. I think about that dude sometimes, and if maybe he has gas station PTSD or something. One time during the first Christmas I shared with my wife, I was washing dishes at my mother-in-law's house while she was cutting veggies on the counter next to me. I see the mother-in-law move to walk behind me out of the corner of my eye. I feel someone smack my ass and give it a good squeeze, which startled me considerably. Then I see her continue past me to look through a cupboard for spices and then walk back to the counter and continue cutting veggies. I looked at her somewhat askance and she didn't even look at me. We sat down to dinner and her mother sits across from me at the table, and at this point I'm paranoid as hell that we've got some sort of weird situation on our hands, half expecting her to start playing footsie with me or something, to the point where I jumped noticeably when I felt a leg rubbing mine, but it was just my girlfriend sitting next to me, so nothing else weird happens with the mother-in-law at all the rest of the night. We retire to the spare bedroom and I finally tell my wife, "Hey, I think your mom smacked my ass and grabbed it while we were in the kitchen earlier." She immediately furrows her brow and gets a confused look on her face and says, "What?" So I describe the situation, and about halfway through the story she starts laughing so hard that she almost falls off the bed. Turns out that she had walked up behind me and did a smack and grab real quick before leaving the kitchen again, and it just happened to coincide with her mom walking behind us. She loves that story, and now every time my wife smacks my ass at my mill house, my mill pipes up that wasn't me, even if she's in a different room. Reminds me of the time my ex-Bill wrapped his arms around me and started playfully humping my back. His GF was standing a few feet away. When he realized his mistake, he quickly jumped back and apologized/ran after his GF, who was stomping away. Later, he said he thought I was his GF. Funny, I'm Asian and she is white. I did the same thing to my mom. I flew home and visiting my parents. I pretty much only spend time with my girlfriend where I live, so it's very easy for me to get used to sitting and rubbing the thigh of the person next to me. That's how we naturally sit together. Well, me and my parents were at the dinner table one day and I started rubbing mom's inner thigh, and it took me a second to notice. Of course she noticed immediately. I'll never live that down. I went to some potluck event with my wife. She was standing right next to me. I was talking to someone and reached up and gave a loving squeeze to her arm. I hear a very British voice say, "Oh, that's nice." And we are Americans in America. I look over mortified and it's some random women. At least we all laughed. I feel you, though not in the way we are discussing. My wife has a sister, and one day at the in-laws house after a couple drinks I decided to start rubbing my wife's shoulders, but unfortunately I didn't look too closely. After a good 10 seconds or so I hear, "You realize I'm your sister, right?" Pretty sure I laughed it off at the time, but that's worth a good cringe when my brain decides to remind me once every couple months or so. Anyway, thanks for the reminder. Hopefully my brain will reset that timer now. That's it folks, you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video.